State, you can call your next witness.
Yes, sir. The state of Florida would call Johnathan Lindros.
Members of the jury will probably take a break at the conclusion of this witness, depending on the length or maybe the middle. We'll see how it go.
I do. Right this way, sir.
We're here to your right, Mr. Lindros. Good morning to you, sir. Hope you're doing well. If you need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you.
Yes, please.
Mr. Gray will certainly take care of you for that. If there's an objection made during the course of your testimony, just pause. Let me rule on the objection first, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Yes.
That said, State, you may inquire you're ready.
Thank you, sir. Give me one moment.
Thank you.
Please, the court. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
State your name, please, sir.
Johnathan Lindros,
And where are you employed?
Ace Pick Apart.
And can you tell us how long you've been employed at ACE?
Approximately 7 years.
All right. What is your title there, sir?
I'm the general manager.
And do you share that responsibility or role with your brother?
Yes.
Is he also a general manager?
Yes, sir.
Is that Gary Lindros?
Yes, sir.
All right. Will you spell your last name for us, please?
Lindros.
All right. Now, Mr. Lindros, would you tell us what your responsibilities are there at ACE as general manager?
General management duties of the facility, the outside production workers, some HR responsibilities, including advertising and interviewing for new employees, and general HR roles.
Is your supervision generally of what we'll refer to as outside employees?
Primarily, yes.
Okay. What do you supervise also the in-office employees?
Yes, I do.
Can you just give us a general breakdown of approximately how many outside employees you have versus inside employees?
Outside employees, about 16 or 17. Inside would probably be about 10.
Is there a supervisor in between your level, general manager, and the outside employees? And I'm specifically asking you about December of 18 to January of 19.
There was a supervisor employed at that time, Larry Carlson. He was out on leave for surgery at the time for a couple of months. So he was not there at that time. So at that time, the answer would be no.
So during the time period of December of 2018 through January of 2019, did the 16 outside employees direct supervisor, was he not there on a daily basis?
Correct. He was not there.
Were you standing in his stead and doing his job during that time period?
Yes, sir.
Was that in addition to your duties?
Yes, sir.
As general manager?
Correct.
Now, just in general for our jury, I know we've already seen a little bit of some photographs. What kind of business is this? Explain what you're doing there, you and your brother.
It's a combination automotive recycling business and retail sales of used auto parts.
All right. And at any given time, approximately how many vehicles, again, focusing on the late 18 going into 2019 year, approximately how many vehicles would be on your property or premises during that time?
Somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 at that time.
Now, with respect to areas of restricted access versus open to the public access, the jury's going to watch some videos later, but just in general, will you tell us, sort of explain the difference of those areas within the business?
We have a retail shopping area when customers come onto the facility where they would go to the cars and pick the parts off the cars themselves while they're shopping. And then we have our production areas where the cars are cleaned, drained, crushed, that type of thing.
And approximately, just on any random day, is it pretty busy there?
Yes.
Could you give us an estimate of how many customers come through there on a daily basis?
During the week, 200, 250 on a daily basis. On the weekend, depending if we have a sale or not, it could be between 350 and 600 people per day.
All right. Now, will you give us a general idea of what the 16 employees that work outside in the yards, what sort of how that's categorized? Are they working in teams? Are they working as 16 individuals? Explain that for us.
We have a production flow. We get approximately 40 to 50 cars dropped off at our facility per day. 40 to 50 cars get crushed per day. When a car comes in, we'll have a couple of guys clean the garbage out of the cars, take the battery out of the cars. Then we have a couple of guys that are draining the fluids out of the cars. And then we have a team that is taking those cars and setting them in the roads in the retail production area. We have a team of 2 people that are pulling those cars from the older cars that are ready to go to the crusher. A team of pulling those cars to go to the crusher area. Then we have a couple of people that are working our tire station to remove tires from rims, working our excavator, which is a big excavating machine with a claw to rip the motors out of the cars, and some wiring harness out of the cars. And then we have a team of people that would be putting the cars in the crusher, crushing the cars, and preparing them to be shipped out for recycling.
All right. Of the 16 employees, are almost all of them working as a pair or in a somewhat of a team?
I would say that is correct, yes.
Are there exceptions to that?
Exception would be if we had someone who would be a fix-it guy, facilities type person, just might be given individual projects. Hey, go do this. Hey, go do that. Maybe working on equipment, servicing equipment, that type of thing. That kind of person would not be working on a team like people in the production workflow.
Sir? I want to show you, we get a little old school on you, show you a blown up map that's previously been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 32. Sir, do you see this map?
Yes, sir, I see it.
And will you give our jury, first and foremost, the road that's running right down the middle of State 32? What is that? What road is that?
Now, are you referring to Main Street?
The 2 yellow lines right down the middle.
Yes, sir, that would be Main Street.
Okay. And for a record, I'm going to draw my finger around your entire facility. You tell me if this is correct.
No.
Okay.
That is you drew your finger around the kind of the retail area.
Your Honor, may I have him step down?
That may be helpful.
Yes, sir. If you could step down, sir.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Skinner, before you go, counsel, feel free to reposition yourself as you deem necessary. Mr. Skinner, why don't you give counsel a chance real quick?
Absolutely, Your Honor. I'll wait just a moment.
Ms. Michelle, you can go either way, whatever you feel.
Judge to stay out of the way of the jury.
So first, just tell us in States 32, what is this road down the middle?
Main Street.
And what do we see up here?
That is Dew Parkway or Hector Parkway.
All right. And if you would, just point to us and draw a line around your entire company.
Okay.
All right. And if you now would point to us where the point of entry to turn into your business and off of the road.
This is a drainage ditch with a railroad track. This is the only point of entry right here.
All right. One way in and one way out.
Right.
And where do employees park?
Employees park anywhere in this parking lot right here.
All right. And the area that's at the top of this exhibit, it looks like it's somewhat unpaved. What is this area in the top portion?
That used to be a cement factory that was unoccupied for many years. We purchased it. We now use it for we call it the downstream production. This is where the cars are currently crushed. At that time, to the best of my recollection, that was the time shortly after we bought it. So we weren't doing our production there yet, but we were storing some cars there, maybe putting cars out, that kind of thing.
In 2018, in December, leading into January 2019, where were cars being crushed at that time?
At that time, cars were being crushed in this area right here.
All right. And will you now point to us where the main office where you generally work on a day-to-day basis is?
This is the main office right here.
All right. And then is the rest of the property where I'm drawing my finger around, is this where these, I think you said thousands of cars are on any given day in your business?
Yes, that's the retail shopping area that you drew your finger around.
Okay.
So there's about 2,500 cars there, and cars waiting to go in that area would be about another 500.
So I'm now going to draw my finger on the bottom right-hand portion in this exhibit of your property. What is this area? What is done over there?
At the time,
Yes, sir.
over here is where the cars are graded. That area is where the excavating and the crushing is going on.
All right. Thank you, sir. Do you know an individual that became known to you in October of 2018 as Johnathan Quiles?
Yes, sir.
And who is he to you?
An employee of Ace Pick Apart, former employee.
Do you see him in the courtroom today, sir?
I do.
Can you describe where he's seated and an article of clothing he's wearing?
He's seated to the right side of the courtroom. I see a white shirt from here, pulled back hair.
Yes, sir. May the record reflect he's identified the defendant.
So reflected.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lindros, when was the defendant hired at your company?
In October 2018.
All right. Was he employed there from October of 2018 up until approximately January 8th of 2019?
Yes.
Is that about almost 3 months?
Yes, sir.
What were his specific responsibilities?
He would fill in for somebody if they were out. That might have been any of the roles we discussed. Draining cars, setting cars, pulling cars, crushing cars. So kind of a filling person if somebody called out. He did have knowledge in a few different fields, whether it was electrical or plumbing. So he was, I would call him a project/facilities person. He might have been moving a fence line, servicing equipment. It could have been anything.
All right. Of the 16 outside employees, first, was he one of them?
Yes.
During those 3 months?
Yes.
And of those 16 outside employees, was he ever on a team of 2 or more, or did he always work as a solo employee?
It's a while ago. To the best of my recollection, was he in one of those roles right at the beginning? I don't think so. If he was filling in for somebody on a particular day, he would have been on that team for that day. But overall, in general, the answer would be no.
So just so our record's clear, because I asked you in the or manner, overall, generally, is he working by himself?
Yes.
Was he a punctual employee?
Yes.
Did he work hard?
Yes.
Now, did there come a time, sir, that he brought to your attention some fencing defects or fencing holes or areas where fencing might need some repairs on your premises?
Yes.
Did he send you something?
Yes.
Do you recall to this day whether it was a text or did he hand it to you, or can you recall?
To the best of my recollection, well, I know, not to my recollection, I know that he handed me a piece of paper of a map that he made.
All right. So I now want to show you what's been admitted into evidence and marked as State's Exhibit number 30. Do you recognize this, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That's a map that he gave me regarding possible defects in the fence.
Is it at all possible to tell today what date he handed that to you?
This was made on the computer.
Okay.
So this is probably something that I made based off of what he handed me.
Okay.
So do I remember when he handed me his hand-drawn map? No.
All right. Was it during those 90 days or so that he was employed for you?
Yes.
Right. And would you, I'm going to show it to the jury in a second, but will you describe what's around the edges, what is actually drawn on this particular exhibit?
Well, the whole entire property is surrounded by, I'm going to say, an 8-foot tall, blue paneled, corrugated steel fence. There are certain places where employees might try to steal something. Maybe there's a gap underneath the fence, something to that effect. And the defendant was pointing out where the weak points in the fence or security might be.
Did he point that out directly to you?
Yes.
Or did you and or him or both make these markings on this exhibit?
This particular piece of paper looks like I took what he handed me and went on the computer and generated this with the photo.
And were you certain it was the defendant that was pointing these spots out?
Absolutely, yes.
Is there a blue line drawn around the entire property?
Most of the property, yes.
Okay. Within the line, are there circled blue dots on the line?
Yes, sir.
Are those the areas that the defendant was pointing out to you where there were either some sort of an area of the fence that needed repairs?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Members of the jury, I think I failed to tell you this earlier. All evidence that's been admitted during the trial will be given to you during your deliberation, so you will get as much time as you need to review this evidence at a later date. I think I failed to tell you that earlier, but just so your knowledge.
Your Honor, because it's so faint, may I publish this to the back row? Let them look at it?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Now, Mr. Lindros, with respect to this particular item, was one of the defendant's duties to fix areas of fencing that might need repairing on your premises? Is that a job he did?
He would do any type of facilities thing that we asked him to do.
Would that be one of them?
Yes.
With regard to where the defendant was allowed to go on your property and or premises, did he have unrestricted access to every inch of your premises?
Yes, sir.
Would it be unusual to find him in the far back corner or in the office?
It wouldn't be unusual.
Now, Mr. Lindros, was there a particular day that when he brought you this particular item, can you even recall whether it was near the beginning of his employment, like the middle of his employment, or toward the end of his employment?
Closer to the middle.
All right. So at least he'd been there approximately a month and a half or so.
At least.
All right. So if he started in October of 2018, best your recollection today is he provided that information to you in November of 2018.
It could have been later than that, but it was at least November.
All right. And maybe leading into the early part of December of 2018?
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Okay. Now, did he have a timesheet?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain for our jury what you expect and demand of your employees with respect to how they clock in and clock out?
Everyone has a time card. When they arrive at the facility, they grab their time card and clock into the time machine. They should clock in at the beginning of the day when they arrive. They should clock out when they leave for lunch, clock in when they return from lunch, and clock out at the end of the day.
All right. And they're told that.
Yes, sir.
Would the defendant have been told that?
Yes, sir.
So if we see him on video later leaving in the middle of the day and he doesn't clock out, that would be at a minimum against your policy.
Yes, sir.
Now, with respect to the time machine, the time clock itself, where is that located at that time?
We did move some operations. I'm trying to remember at that time. Currently, it's located in that cement factory area. At that time, I think it may have been located closer to where we saw the production on the near the drain rack, and there's a yellow house in that area.
All right. Well, let me eliminate some other places. At that time, was it in the office?
It was never in the office.
Fair enough. So you never had to come into the office to punch your time card?
No, sir.
You mentioned the employee parking was running along the front part of the business. Is that always where the defendant parked that you were aware of?
As far as I was aware, that's where he always parked, in the same parking lot that the customers park in.
Generally speaking, can you describe for us, very generally, what vehicle you remember him driving at that time?
I remember it was a red minivan.
Now, with respect to the time clock, is it something that once you clock in, it reflects a time and produces a ticket?
Yes, sir. You have one ticket for the whole week, and throughout the week you punch in and punch out as you come and go.
All right. Sir, now I want to show you what's been marked in State Exhibit 65. It has been admitted into evidence. So there's the state number.
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize that exhibit, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is this?
That is Jonathan's time card for that week.
And by Johnathan, you mean the defendant, Johnathan Quiles?
Yes, sir.
What name does it have at the top?
J, I thought it was Quiles, but Quiles.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And it says at the top right, pay period ending with a blank. What date is this the pay period ending for the defendant?
That would be the Sunday at the end of that week.
Okay, and what is the date on there?
December 23rd, 2018.
All right. Are there rows of time that he punched in prior to this leading up to December 23rd, 2018?
I'm sorry, prior to...
So this says pay period ending December 23rd of 18.
Right.
Are there dates and times reflecting when he arrived leading up to that particular date?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me let you hold that exhibit, and I'm directing your attention to December 19 of 2018. What time did the defendant clock in on that day?
8:08.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, on the 19th?
Yes, sir.
8:08 a.m.
Oh, okay. 8:08 a.m. What time did he clock out on December 19, 2018?
5:09 p.m.
Yes, sir. Moving to the next day on December 20 of 2018, what time did he clock in that morning?
8:02 a.m.
And what time did he clock out on December 20th, 2018?
2:48 p.m.
Do you note on either day whether there was a time period where he clocked out to either run an errand or go to lunch or do anything on his own personal time?
Do I see it on here?
Do you see any lunch clock out on either date, December 19 or December 20?
No, sir.
time, Your Honor, request to publish to the back row. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ms. Massell, just so you know, I'll probably give the jury a break between after the direct before your cross. Just want to give you a heads up.
Mr. Lindros, if there's no clock out lunch hour on December 19 or December 20 of 2018, and we see on the video that he departs the premises, is that against your policy not to clock out?
Yes, sir.
We'll look at video through your brother later, but in terms of this timesheet, is there anything you could point us to that shows that he left the premises on December 19 or December 20?
No, sir.
Now, did there come a day, sir, in early to mid-January 2019 that the police arrived at your business?
Yes, sir.
And did they arrive to conduct searches of various areas of your business?
Yes, sir.
Cooperate and assist the police in that?
Yes.
All right. Did they bring a canine and or a police dog trained for scent to your premises?
Yes.
Did they do that on more than one occasion, if you can recall?
They did.
Did you show them around?
Yes.
Now, the areas that they were searching do you recall whether they were generally areas that were closed to the public, if you can recall?
On one occasion when they came was when I was showing them around. On that occasion, yes, area closed to the public.
Do you recall them searching in an area that was in the far back right corner of your property?
Yes, sir.
Can you give us an estimate of the entire size of Ace Pick Apart?
30 acres.
Can you give us, in your best estimate, approximately how many of those acres are restricted to employees only?
Approximately 10 acres.
So it's a pretty big area. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there cameras that monitor areas within your premises?
Yes, sir.
And who's in charge of that within your company?
My brother set the system up. Yes, sir.
He's coming right behind you, so we'll ask him generally about that. But in terms of the cameras, do you gentlemen utilize the cameras for what purpose? Is it for employees or is it for theft prevention? Explain to our jury why you'll have the cameras.
Primarily theft.
Okay. And is that theft, generally speaking, from customers and or employees, or just customers? Or
It could be for anybody, but primarily customers. Could be for anybody.
Right. Now, specifically directing your attention, this will be the last sort of area, sir. Just see if I can direct your attention directly to December 19, 2018, following through to the next day, December 20, 2018. At that time, is there anything that was unusual regarding those particular days of business?
No, sir.
Okay. Were you still on those 2 days standing in the shoes of Larry Carlson, who was the outside supervisor at that time?
Yes, sir.
So your duties were doubled up during those 2 days?
Correct.
Can you give us an estimate about how much time you personally were spending inside the office versus out in the yard on any given day?
Say I was 25% of the time outside of the office, checking on the employees, what they were up to, and 75% of the time in the office.
Okay. And is that a normal day when Mr. Carlson is present, or is that your day when he was out for those couple of months?
That's more than it would normally be.
Okay.
More time outside than it would normally be.
All right. So the 25% time period that you said you're outside, was that during the time period Mr. Carlson was out?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean 3/4 of your day around the time frame he was out, including December 19th and 20th, 3/4 of your day you were in the office?
Yes.
Do you agree, sir, that it is difficult to keep an eye on every single employee, especially the 16 or more outside employees when you're doubled up in your duties?
Yes.
Talk to me about the noise at your company. Explain that to our jury. What's it sound like if we were just standing on your premises?
Typical, I would say, commercial operation. You hear heavy machinery operating, crusher crushing, excavator, loud banging noises. That would be it. Pretty loud, yes.
All right. Ever hear any popping of tires, removing tires off cars, anything like that?
Yes, sir.
Now, just in terms of an employee, when they leave, let's assume for a moment an employee left and did not clock out. Would that be something either your cameras or your eyes would have to catch to hold that employee accountable?
Yes.
You believe that could happen without your eyes and or the cameras catching that?
Anything is possible, yes, sir.
Sir? You do agree, however, that the cameras, whatever they capture, you agree with respect to what's on the cameras?
Yes, sir.
And you've actually had a chance to, just to lay a couple predicate questions for you while we're there. We're going to ask your brother extensively about it, but did you review the clips from December 19 and December 20, 2018?
Yes, sir.
Do they fairly and accurately depict the defendant's actions on each and every one of the clips that you saw prior to coming to court today?
Yes, sir, they do.
And for our record, were you shown State's Exhibit 31, which is a compilation of clips from both of those days?
Yes, sir.
And you've reviewed those, and it's your testimony that they fairly and accurately depict the defendant's movements on that day?
Yes.
Did you see him leave your premises that day, sir?
I did.
On December 19, 2018?
Yes, sir.
And we'll watch it later, but if he left the premises in the middle of the day on December 19, 2018 and didn't clock out, is that against your company policy?
Yes, sir.
Now, at the end of the day, when you close up for the day, who's the last person to leave?
It depends on the manager on duty. Would be typically me, my brother Gary. We have an office manager named Cheryl. Would be one of the three of us.
And are there efforts made either by traversing around the lot in a golf cart or otherwise, checking to make sure all employees and or customers are gone?
Yes, we have an office staff employee. Every day we'll drive the parking lot, make sure all the cars are gone on a golf cart, and then drive the entire 30-acre facility and make sure that all the customers are gone also.
And would you have one of your outside employees, one of those 16 plus, do this end of the day sweep?
Typically it's an office person. On occasion it could be an outside employee.
All right. And is the office sweep where, do you go over the entire premises?
The customer retail shopping area.
Okay. So let me ask it another way. Are the restricted areas that are only for the employees, is that part of a nightly sweep by management?
No.
And then lastly, sir, regarding a dumpster on your lot, is there one larger commercial trash dumpster on Ace Pick Apart in December of 2018?
Yes, sir.
Who was the contract through that put the dumpster there on your property?
All-American, I believe, at the time.
All right, Mr. Billy Brown, I think, testified earlier, so you don't need to go into anything with respect to that account. But when that large receptacle was placed on your premises, how often would it fill up to where it needed to be emptied, sir?
Approximately once a week.
Right. And who made the phone call? Was it like a regular pickup, or did somebody have to call to get it picked up?
It was not a regular pickup either. I would observe with my own eyes, hey, that's full. I would immediately call All-American. It's full, come and get it. Sometimes an employee in the production area would, hey, John, it's full, order one, and then I would call and order a pickup.
Once you called with that particular employee from All-American, would they come pick up the receptacle and empty it within a day or so of you calling?
Yes, same day or next day typically.
If you were, for example, if you were advised it's full on December 19th, is it your testimony that by December 20th that receptacle would have been hauled off?
Yes, sir.
You recall, I know it's been many years, but can you recall whether you called on December 19th?
I have no recollection. Well, I'm sure I'm the one that called.
Right.
Whether or not I saw it or someone told me to call, I have no recollection of.
Sure. And Mr. Brown testified to that. But just in terms of you sitting here, it's emptied once a week and you call to have it removed.
Yes, sir.
If you got to that once a week time period, what day generally would it be? It was like middle of the week, or can you recall?
I don't recall.
Okay.
Could
So
be any day.
is it safe to assume this? When it's full, doesn't necessarily mean 7 days. Is that correct?
Doesn't necessarily mean 7 days. Depends on the inflow of cars, how much garbage. If we buy a lot of vans that are full of garbage or cars that have there's not a typical, I can't say, I call it every Thursday typically.
All right.
That would be hard to say.
How big is this particular dumpster?
It's a 40-yard dumpster. I would say it's the size of the jury box, as tall as the top of the paintings behind them.
The top of the paintings of the judges behind.
Correct.
Okay. Upwards of, can you just give us an estimate in feet?
How tall is that approximately? 7 feet.
Okay. Was the defendant himself capable of operating equipment on your premises?
Yes, sir.
You ever see him emptying items into, for example, that particular receptacle?
Yes, sir.
Would that be unusual?
No, sir.
Would that be something he would do commonly?
Yes.
Would it also be something that would be commonly expected of the defendant to come advise you that receptacle is full?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Yeah. I'll ask. That's fine. Very briefly, Your Honor, just a couple follow-up, Mr. Lindros, before I sit down. What was the common operating hours of Ace Pick Apart in December of 2018?
During our winter hours, for the operating hours are 8 to 5.
All right. And having reviewed some of the video clips that the jury will see, I think, with the next witness, did you observe the defendant on either December 19 or December 20 carrying duct tape?
Yes, sir.
Would you tell our jury what specific reason, if any, the defendant would be carrying duct tape in the yard?
There's no typical duty. I don't want to say there's never any occasion, but there's no typical duty that would require it.
All right. And then on that map, sir, I just want to make sure to point out for our jury, when you turn in to your business off of what the map shows as Main Street, when you turn in up there, Would you have to park in the employee area, or can you go other areas in your property in a vehicle?
You should be parking in the employee parking lot, which is the same as the customer parking area. Can you go elsewhere? At that time, I would say possibly.
Okay.
I don't.
In a vehicle?
Typically, no. I don't recall at that time what was going on with the new property that we recently purchased, the cement area.
All right. If you turn in off of Main Street, can you drive into this area, what you call the old cement factory?
At the time, I would say no.
Okay. When you turn in and come down to the employee parking, can you turn in and come into the interior portion?
Okay, can I take a step back? At the time, I would say no, there were no typical operations going on in that cement factory. Could there have been access for reasons at that time? Perhaps. So I don't want to comment either way.
Okay. Tough to remember?
Tough to remember.
Okay. And then lastly, with regard to the clips, I want to ask you about, with respect to clothing. Did you see, either on December 19, December 20, 2018, the defendant walking out of the office with an additional item of clothing in his arms? And if so, what is that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yes. On either December 19, December 20th, when you reviewed the video clips, did you see the defendant walking out of the office with an additional item of clothing under his arms?
Additional item of clothing under his arms?
Or holding in his hands?
Not that I recall.
Okay. We'll let Mr.
Didn't study
your
that closely.
All right. Let me ask it this way. When you get issued like a rain suit or a shirt,
Right.
or something like that, where would you go in the premises to retrieve that from the company?
If someone's wearing, I did see him wearing a rain suit on the 20th in the video, which was different than anybody else. I can't say for sure that we don't have that on premises to give people, but it would typically be their own.
Okay. So if he's walking out of the office holding an article of clothing, to your knowledge, it's nothing that would have been issued through your office.
If he walked in and said, "It's raining, do you guys have a spare raincoat in the thing?" Maybe we would have said, "Yeah, here you go." But it wasn't something that we typically issued to all employees.
All right. Now, with respect to that last comment you made, just a quick follow-up. On December 20th, you've reviewed all those video clips?
Yes.
And you said he was the only employee that day wearing an all-yellow rain suit?
As far as I can tell, yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Nothing further. Thank you, sir.
All right, members of the jury, we're going to take our mid-morning break at this point. It's 10:51. We'll come back out at 11:15, and we'll go from there. Please remember, don't discuss the case among yourselves or each other. Have a nice lunch break. Or, excuse me, have a nice break, not lunch break yet. All right, Mr. Lindros, you're more than welcome to exit the courtroom, and we'll call you back out around 11:15 and have you take the stand just as you are now to begin the cross by defense attorneys.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
You guys may have a seat, of course. The jury's outside our presence, as is Mr. Lindros. We'll take a break here in a moment. One thing I wanted to add to circle back to our conversation earlier regarding the transcript. So standard instruction 2.6, use of transcripts of recordings, I'm reading verbatim. This instruction is not intended to apply to a recording of a conversation in any language other than English. That's not, to my knowledge, not implicated in this case. It also says, in case of disputed transcripts, see Martinez v. State, 761 Southern 2nd, 1074. It's a Florida Supreme Court case from 2000. I'll also cite to McCoy v. State, 853 Southern 2nd, 396. It's a Supreme Court case from 2003. It talks about having a hearing outside the jury's presence, of course. You would think pre-trial to resolve any disputes as to the transcript. It does also talk about how the preferred method is to the parties stipulate to the accuracy of the transcript. However, if that cannot be accomplished, I think we're looking at a long afternoon to accomplish this work prior to tomorrow, outside the jury's presence, of course. How that fits our timeline, I don't know. I'm mentioning it now at our first break just to kind of give you a heads up. We can discuss it later as to how you guys think we should best resolve it. I think you guys should talk about any inaccuracies you guys believe, see if the state agrees to those, and see how that changes. But I think it would require a hearing if there are disputes and potentially evidentiary based on some of the case law I read, for the state to lay any kind of foundation to their to build up the accuracy of it, whether it be through participants of that audio recording. So I'm mentioning it now just to kind of give you a heads up, because I think it may change course of what we do this afternoon. I don't want to keep you guys late, of course, but if I have to let the jury go early so we can accomplish this ahead of tomorrow, we may have to do so. So.
Yes, sir. May I put one other case on the record for the court?
Of course.
Davis v. State, 121 Southern 3rd, 462. Again, that's Davis, 121 Southern 3rd, 462, Florida Supreme Court case, 2013. And it basically stands for the proposition that if the trial court cannot determine what is being said in parts of the transcript, but the transcript is otherwise audible, the court should use a jury instruction that tells the jurors to rely upon what they hear in the recording and not rely upon the transcript, which of course, Your Honor, adheres to what the standard instruction says regarding that anyhow, but I just want to point out there's a case that says when there are parts that are in dispute, the court can give sort of a further cautionary instruction. Again, that's Davis, State, 121 Southern 3rd, 462, Florida Supreme Court case, 2013.
Yeah, I came across that case as well, but that's only after only after a hearing, though, isn't it?
I haven't read the body, Judge. We just came across it, but yes, I mean, we're getting into it, but yes, and I understand the court on the timeliness issue, and yeah,
well, the timeliness is one thing, but I'm saying that proposition you cited it for does not obviate the need for a hearing if there are disputes.
The state agrees.
Okay. So we will address it maybe after the lunch hour once you guys have a chance to talk about it. I probably will give the jury a longer lunch given it's Monday, more jurors are in the courthouse. I just want to bring it to your attention so we can handle it accordingly and you guys can discuss it as you deem fit. So we'll be in break until 11:15.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go back on the record. I do have counsel of the State Defense and Mr. Quiles present. Before we continue and bring the jury back in, has there been any further discussion regarding parties agreeing to waive sequestration during deliberations? I ask because at some point I need to get the clerk's office enough notice to where they can make arrangements if it's not being waived.
Actually, Judge, when we get to the lunch break, I'll start talking about the transcript. I will finish talking to him about that issue,
Okay,
so that hopefully we can give you an answer by the afternoon break.
sounds great. Okay.
Yes, we have been working on that.
Is it safe to say that the state's agreeing to waive it if the defense waives it? Or that hasn't occurred yet?
We've just been waiting to hear back from the defense. I know that they were going over it with their client.
Okay.
So that's what we were just waiting on first.
Yeah, but the afternoon sounds fine.
We should be able to get an answer again.
Sure. I asked not because I'm concerned about it, just because I want to give the clerk's office a heads up, and if that may be one less issue that the jury has to worry about,
Right.
if necessary. So With that said, say anything before we bring the jury back in?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Anything from the defense? Okay, let's bring the jury back in, please. Oh yeah, whatever you want to do is fine.
Your Honor, the jury reviewers report.
Members of the jury, welcome back. You guys may have a seat, of course. We're going to continue with the test. Sir, you may have a seat as well, of course. We're going to continue with Mr. Lindros' testimony. If you recall, we left off after the state's direct. We're now turned to the defense for any cross. Ms. Michelle, you may inquire. You're ready.
Thank you, Judge. It's still afternoon, yeah, or good morning still.
Good morning.
All right, let me start by talking just a little bit about Mr. Quiles as an employee. He was hired in October of 2018, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that would have been about 2 months that he was working for you prior to this incident that occurred.
Yes, ma'am.
As far as the type of employee that he was, you stated on direct that he was generally a good employee, on time.
Yes, ma'am. No complaints. A good employee.
You were satisfied with his work. He was a hard worker.
Yes, ma'am.
And you described his role as he would fill in with people, and when he was filling in, he would be partnered up the way you described your teams of people in the production area.
Correct.
Okay, and so he would work with several different people on the production team.
When he was in that role, correct.
And from time to time, he would fill that role during that 2-month period prior to this incident occurring.
Yes, ma'am.
You also described him as kind of a all-around type of handyman. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so he would fix things if they were broken and that type of thing.
Yes.
Okay. And so as far as I know you were shown a map that you generated and kind of made markings on, correct?
Yes.
That map, that was talking about specifically about things that were broken or repairs that needed to be made in the exterior fence around your property.
Yes.
And so that type of information would be normal to come from him because that was what he was doing, repairing things.
The answer to that would be, unsolicited. I found it odd that he produced a kind of security check of the fence. It would be normal for him to do it if we asked him to do. It would not be unusual for us to ask something like that of him or anybody else. You know, can you go see where there might be some holes under the fence, something like that. In that particular occasion, it was unsolicited. I thought that was odd.
Okay, and when you say unsolicited, it was unsolicited from you.
Correct.
Okay, you're not sure if someone else asked him about that area and then he was providing that information to you.
The only two people that would ask would be me or my brother Gary, and I know that neither one of us did. He'll be here later. You can ask him. And the only other person would be Larry, the yard manager, who was out on surgery leave for a couple of months at that time.
Understood. And you talked about some thefts that you all had and that was kind of a common thing, that there would be thefts at the property, correct?
It depends what your definition of common is, but yes, there are on occasion thefts, correct.
Do you recall around this time period when that map was provided to you that there had been an incident of a theft from a hole in the fence?
It's possible we could have found some parts on the other side of the fence that were shoved underneath the fence, something like that. I don't recall. I apologize.
Okay. And if that scenario, that there was a theft and there was a hole in the fence, that parts were placed on the other side, that would be something that you would ask Mr. Quiles back then to fix or to repair.
Yes, if we found parts on the other side of the fence, there was a hole under the fence, we might have said, can you go see where there might be some holes that we can fill in dirt or something underneath? I would ask him that if that happened.
Okay. And you can't recall specifically doing that as you sit here today, but it's not out. That would not be out of the ordinary if that were to be the case.
It would not be out of the ordinary at all if that was the case, but I specifically remember being surprised when he handed me the map because I did not ask him to do it.
Okay. And you don't know that your brother or someone else did not ask him or point something out?
I do know that my brother did not, and there's nobody else that would.
Okay. As far as actually making repairs and things like that around the property, he wouldn't just repair fences or things like that. If there was a piece of machinery or something like that that might be broken, that might be something you would ask him to repair as well, correct?
If he saw a piece of machinery that needed to be serviced, he might just go ahead and service it without being asked.
Okay. And so doing things like that, that was kind of the type of employee that he was. If he saw something that needed to be fixed, he would jump to and do it.
He has, yes.
Okay. As far as some of the machinery that you had, do you recall there being a tire machine near that entrance area to your property?
Yes, so at that time we had a tire station there where we were removing tires from rims. Yeah.
Okay, and would that have been when you were shown, and I might come around and actually show this to you.
Now, when you say near the entrance of the property, I have to see what you're talking about to make sure we're talking about the same place.
That's exactly why I'm coming over, just so that I can show you.
Okay.
That way we can make sure it's clear. And maybe if you could step down again, that seemed to work
Yes, ma'am.
a lot better earlier, so that the jury can see exactly what we're pointing to. And thank you, I was going to come. All right, so if you could, please, can you all see? If you could point to where that tire machine area would be on this map.
That tire machine operation was going on in this general vicinity at that time.
Okay. And were there any tire machinery or anything like that in the area where you had just purchased? Did you guys have anything around there back at that time?
Not to my recollection.
Okay. Did you guys have any machinery or any other items in that area where you had just acquired that property?
Could we have been parking equipment there, that kind of thing, is possible. Nothing that was part of our regular production cycle at that time.
Thank you so much.
May I have a seat?
Sir?
The witness have a seat?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Sorry about
He
that.
was,
Thank you.
he was lingering and
I turned my back. I thought you were going back as well, so that's my fault. So sorry. Now that you're seated again.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So that tire machinery, do you recall a time period where that machine broke down?
Not that I recall, but the tire machine does break down occasionally.
Okay. For example, if that tire machine was broken around this time period and it needed a part, would you ask Mr. Quiles to go and get that part for you?
If there was nobody else to get the part, then we would possibly do it. Typically, the person that would go with a credit card, for example, to go get a part would be me, my brother, or Larry, the yard manager. Larry, the yard manager, was out. On the 19th, my brother and I were both in the office, so to ask someone else to go to buy a part would be unusual.
Okay. But you don't have any independent recollection as you sit here today whether you did or you didn't?
I can't say for sure 100% that I did or I didn't.
But it does sound like something you might ask Mr. Quiles to do. Hey, can you go buy a part? We need XYZ fixed, and you're the guy that's fixing it.
In a bind, yes.
Okay. And, for example, if he needed to go buy a part, you asked him to go do so, would he clock out to go and do that, or would that be on company time?
If he was going to run an errand for the company, he would not clock out.
Okay. And so on the 19th, if you did in fact ask him to go on an errand and he didn't clock out, there would be nothing abnormal about that, nor would that be against any policy that you have.
Correct.
Now, I want to turn your attention to those specific days, and I know you said you reviewed video, so I'll get into that. But on those days, looking back, do you recall anything out of the ordinary happening that day?
I do not.
Do you recall interacting with Mr. Quiles in those days?
I don't recall interacting with anybody on that day. It was over 4 years ago.
Would you have interacted with him? I know you can't recall that, right?
I definitely would have.
Okay. And from what you can remember, did he seem to be out of the ordinary in any way?
Nothing that I remember.
As far as what he was doing those days, working, did he perform his duties as normal during those days?
I don't recall anything that stood out one way or another.
Okay, so you don't remember him being absent doing something off without supervision for any extended period of time during those days?
Correct.
All right, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about this duct tape. So you said in reviewing the video, you can see that he has duct tape in his hand at some point.
Correct.
And you said there's typically no function that you could think of, but there are some things he could be using duct tape for that would be work-related, correct?
Correct.
And so although you can't think of anything specifically that he may have been doing, it's completely plausible that he had duct tape for work purposes.
Yes.
You never see him doing anything with that duct tape. You just see it in his hand.
In the video, correct.
And you don't know where he retrieved that from, or whether it was within the office or somewhere else on the grounds of your property.
Yes, I don't know. The video may show him walking in the office without it and walking out of the office with it. That's possible. I don't recall.
Okay. And so if he got that from the office, it very well could have been something work-related, correct?
It's possible.
And you talked about the procedures as far as checking the lot at the end of the day. You said that you guys do run through you go on a golf cart and kind of run the aisles where the customers are shopping.
Correct.
And that's where that 2,500 to 3,000 number of cars are located on your property.
Yes.
Is it also, although you may not check every part of the restricted area, are there any times where you do also use the golf cart to kind of run through the restricted areas of your property?
We can see most of the restricted area from the office. So, yes, I mean, employees are the ones doing the check. Employees would be the ones that would be working in those restricted areas. We would not have a lot of reason to check the employee area. Employees want to go home at the end of the day. So, hey, go home. You know, that would be odd.
Fair enough. So to you, it would be very strange if someone stayed overnight at their job.
Yes.
As far as the possibility of there being someone who's stayed in a restricted area of your facility, you would say from the office you'd pretty much be able to see every area.
Not 100% coverage of every area, but for the most part, we can see. Yes.
And that would be the reason why you wouldn't necessarily take a golf cart like you would through the customer areas.
We want to make sure all the customers are gone before we lock them in, before we leave at the end of the night.
Understood. And as far as the likelihood of there being a person hiding on the property overnight, can you give me what you would say with the likelihood of that being?
Low. Anything's possible, but low.
So it'd be very unlikely that that could happen.
I don't have a recollection of it ever happening, but I suppose anything's possible.
In your review of, well, let me ask you a little bit about the garbage. The garbage that you guys collect on the property, that comes from where exactly?
Comes from the 40 to 50 cars that we buy every day.
Okay. And when you receive those vehicles, you empty all the contents within inside of that vehicle.
Relatively, the garbage should come out of the vehicles. Yes.
And the type of vehicles that you receive vary from fatal car crash vehicles to vehicles people are getting rid of. It could really be any type of vehicle that you would receive, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You could even get vehicles that people have been living in.
Yes, ma'am.
And so if someone had been living in it and they had a ton of clothing and items from their home that you would typically find in a home, that would be something you all would take out and dump in the garbage, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you do that for every vehicle that comes into your property.
Correct.
You also describe the process of what you all do as far as removing the liquids and the tires and all of that. So you basically strip the vehicle down.
Strip the vehicle down. We don't take parts off the car. The car gets put into the yard, but we take fluids and garbage out of the vehicle and the battery. Everything else is left.
Understood. And that garbage that you guys accumulate, does all of that eventually make its way into that 40-yard dumpster?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you have smaller dumpsters throughout the property, correct?
Well, not throughout the property. In the area where the cars get dropped off by the tow trucks, there is a team of typically 2 guys that are taking the garbage out of the cars and throwing that garbage into a dumpster. So that's really one dumpster, one smaller dumpster.
So there's one smaller dumpster that then gets put into a larger.
Yes, it's open-ended and easier for people to take the garbage out of the cars and shovel it directly into that dumpster.
And there are, like you said, there's a team of 2 people who are doing that throughout the day.
Yes.
As far as the proximity of these things to each other, I know you said the property is quite large. When your employees are working in these teams, are they covering a good amount of that area?
Well, the 30 acres, I think we said that 20 of it is customer shopping area. Most of the production is going on in the 10 acres. So I would say most of the employees are working in that 10-acre area.
And would that be something where essentially if you're working in this area, you could see other teams of people working in other areas of the property?
Yes.
All right, and you said that you were there when the property was searched with canines, correct?
It happened on more than one occasion. On one occasion, I was there, yes.
You don't recall the exact date of that, do you?
I do not.
Okay, and it was after, you believe it was January, is that approximately correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when that search happened, no apparent murder scene was located, correct?
Correct.
And no area with evidence of blood was located, correct?
I think the canine did detect blood. I don't know what the determination of that was or wasn't.
As far as bullet fragments, nothing like that was located.
I wasn't privy to what was located and what wasn't located. The only thing I was privy to was whatever anyone else would have read it in the newspaper.
Understood. And that's why I'm asking what your personal knowledge is, not something that you may have learned from the news.
Yeah, my personal knowledge is I can't speak to that one way or another.
And you said you reviewed those cameras from the 19th and 20th. You never saw Mr. Quiles dumping a body of any sorts, did you?
I didn't review 100% of the footage, so in the footage that I saw, I did not.
You never saw, in your review of whatever footage you've seen, you never saw a young woman with Mr. Quiles, did you?
The footage that I saw, I did not see that.
You never saw him placing anybody in a vehicle in that restricted area of your property, did you?
No, ma'am.
As far as that 40-yard dumpster goes, you're the one who actually calls and gets that American garbage truck to come and pick that dumpster up, correct?
Typically, it is my observation, hey, it's full, and I make a phone call. An employee will call me, hey, it's full, call for pickup. With that said, the number is on the side of the dumpster, the phone number for the dumpster company. Could another employee call? Perhaps, but it's rare. Sorry, it's not something that would be typical of our procedure.
Okay. And you, on that 19th or 20th day, you were the one who actually called for American garbage.
I don't remember for certain. Typically, it should have been me. I would imagine that it was me.
That wouldn't be something you would have a 2-month new employee do, correct?
I wouldn't have a 4-year employee make that phone call. Typically, it would be me.
Okay, so Mr. Quiles has no control whatsoever over when that 40-yard dumpster was going to get picked up.
Other than telling me it's full, pick it up. So, like I said, sometimes it's my observation, it's full, I better call. Sometimes it's an employee that would say, hey, John, it's full, you might want to call for a swap out.
Okay. And they wouldn't call out for that to happen if it wasn't full, correct?
They should not.
Okay. When an employee comes and says, hey, the dumpster's full, you might want to call out, you would verify that typically, wouldn't you?
No, I might not. Sometimes they'll call me when I'm off or on vacation. Hey, call for a swap out. And I'll say, okay, and I'll call for a swap out.
Okay. If you were there, though, you typically would be able to see it with your own eyes.
I could typically see it over the top of the dumpster when I'm there, correct.
And on these dates that we're talking about, you weren't on vacation or anything like that?
On the 19th, I know that I was there. Do I recall if I did a visual check before I called? I don't remember.
But you would agree that you could pretty much see it from the property, correct?
Yes,
And if you were there, you would physically be able to see that it was full.
I would be able to see, yes.
And if you did see that, then you'd be the one who just go ahead and make the call.
Typically, yes. With that said, sometimes the dumpster will appear full, and the loader operator could pack down the contents and get more in there. So it's not always, my observation's not always accurate.
All right. As far as where that area is, there is a car crusher right near where that dumpster is, correct?
At that time, that is correct.
Okay, and there would be a team of employees who'd be right there near that car crusher, right?
Correct. There would be a loader operator who should load the cars into the crusher.
And would that be the same type of production team that you described, at least 2 people?
There would be a loader operator loading the crusher, and I would say a ground guy that would keep the ground clean and wrap the cars in netting after they're crushed. Yes.
And then if someone was also bringing debris or garbage from another dumpster or wherever into that dumpster, that would be another person who's in that area, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, basically what I'm asking is the car crushing people aren't also then taking stuff into that dumpster. So if someone's bringing something to the dumpster, that would be a separate person from the car crushing team that you just talked about.
Typically, it could be the smaller dumpster that the car cleaners fill up. They could really wave down any loader operator and say, hey, this is full, do you mind dumping it? They could call over the guy loading the crusher. They could call over the loader operator that's putting cars on the rack to be drained, or anyone else running around on a loader.
Understand. So there are employees that are in that area moving about throughout the day, correct?
Correct.
It's not an area that's no man's land where no one's going on a regular basis.
You are correct.
Okay. So if Mr. Quiles, during that time period, was working on one of those kind of like solo projects that you described, that sometimes you tell him, hey, I need this fixed, and he would go and do it, would that be something where he would come in and check in with you on a regular basis?
He may or may not if he needed something. I suppose that I would go and check on him. Hey, how's it going? What are you up to? Do you need anything?
And by check-in, I also mean, would he also, let's say he was repairing the tire machine and then completed that job, he would come to you and ask you for additional jobs to continue working?
If there weren't already known additional things to do.
Understood. And during that time period, I know you said that you didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. In your review of the video, was Mr. Quiles coming to the office on a regular basis throughout those 2 days?
I'll say he did come in and out of the office a few times. The definition of a regular basis, without having watched 100% of the video, that would be hard for me to say.
Okay. And during those times when he would come to the office, is that to check in with you, or is that to grab items that he needed? What would he be coming to the office for, typically?
Maybe to get a pair of gloves, maybe to get a key for a piece of equipment, that type of thing.
Would he also come to the office to check in with you?
Maybe, hey, I'm done with that, or I can't do this for that one reason or another. So if there was a reason, yes.
Okay. And so outside of the time periods where you'd be out checking, there could also be times when employees might come in and actually have conversations with you and check in that way as well.
Yes.
And I know you said that there were probably about 16, 17 employees, well, 16 if Mr. Carlson wasn't there throughout that time period. Those employees freely move about the property, especially in that restricted area, all throughout the day, correct?
Well, they should be working in their station that they're assigned. Could they freely move around? Yes.
And let me ask you about that a little bit more. If they're assigned to the car crushing area, for example, are they in that area all day?
Could they be called away to do another task or go help somebody do something else? Just like any job, I suppose that's possible. But yeah, typically if they're crushing cars, we're crushing cars all day, they would be in that area all day.
Okay, so normally they would be in that area for the majority of the day.
Yes.
Not that there isn't a possibility that they could be called away,
Right.
but just on a normal day, they would be there and they'd be there most of the day.
Correct.
And that would be the same for each area that you kind of described as far as in the production.
Yes.
Do you also have garbage collection areas that's outside of your property, directly out front side of your property, maybe even where that parking lot is?
There are garbage cans in our retail public parking lot, just like there would be in any retail public parking lot. But
And does that garbage then get moved or dumped into that 40-yard dumpster?
not directly. Someone will go through that parking lot with a front-end loader or a smaller open-ended dumpster, where it's easier to dump those cans directly into the bucket of a front-end loader and then go from there and dump it into the 40-yard dumpster.
And that front garbage that you're describing, that's open to the public, correct?
That's open to the public, correct?
That's not behind the gates where you lock and restrict that area.
We do lock our public parking area overnight, but during the day it's open to the public.
Understood. And let me ask you, do you recall Mr. Quiles referring a young lady by the name of Margie Mobley to you for a job?
Yes,
Okay. And did you, in fact, hire her after Mr. Quiles referred her to you?
I did.
And she was working during that time period at Ace Pickup Park that we're talking about, right, in that December time period.
She was.
Did you also, at some point, employ Mr. Quiles' son?
No.
Did he work in the parking lot at all while Mr. Quiles worked there? Do you recall that?
He was not employed by us. Johnathan asked me at one point if he said his son got into some trouble in school, he wanted to teach him a lesson. I said he was too young for us to employ. He said, do you mind if I just have him pick up garbage around the parking lot, something like that? I said, if he's in the parking lot, I suppose he could do whatever he wants, but we're not employing him.
Understood.
That's the recollection of that conversation.
So sorry, I didn't mean to
Okay.
cut you off.
Okay.
And that would have been during the same time period in December.
I don't recall the time period. Sounds about right, but I can't say for sure.
If he worked from October until December of when this incident occurred, it was in that time period.
I suppose. He wouldn't have asked 2 weeks into employment, so it would have been, yeah.
Okay, so likely it was in December.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a moment. Follow-up and then we'll be done. All right, and let me just clarify and make sure I have this clear. Where that 40-yard dumpster is, it's right in front of what you guys call the rack, right?
In front of is a relative term. It's near the rack. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the number of people who are where that rack is, How many?
And during the course of when people aren't at lunch and everyone's there working, 5 or 6.
That would be right near where that 40-yard dumpster is, correct?
Again, that right near is relative, but in that general, yes.
And then I just want to follow up on this last thing here. Those 2 days, December 19th and December 20th, you never saw Mr. Quiles acting in any suspicious way.
No, ma'am.
You never saw him hiding anything or doing things he wasn't supposed to be doing.
No, ma'am.
In fact, he was very normal those days as best you can recall.
I don't recall anything one way or another. Yes, ma'am.
Nothing of note.
Nothing of
as
note.
far as that you can remember.
You are correct, yes.
Thank you so much.
Brief redirect, Your Honor. Sir, counsel brought up that whether the defendant worked in teams. Did you tell us on direct that generally in the majority of the time he worked by himself?
Yes, sir.
Can you put, is there any way to put it at like 3/4 of his time, 80% of his time?
3/4 would be about accurate. So, yes.
Thank you. And then counsel brought up that when the defendant brought to your attention the issues in the fence, you said surprised you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. It didn't surprise you that there were holes in the fence. It surprised you that the defendant brought it to your attention. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't recall if the holes were in the fence, under the fence, but yes, it was a task that I did not ask. I was surprised. Like, whoa.
All right.
Thank you.
And I think the term that you said, it was unsolicited. So let me ask it this way. Whether it was the defendant or anyone, do you have any recollection of asking anyone at that time to go do that?
No, sir.
Sir? Now, they also brought out on cross-examination that the defendant wouldn't necessarily have to clock out if he was running an errand off-site. Do you have any recollection of ever asking him to do that, and if so, how often?
I would say I have no recollection. I will not say that it has never happened, but I have no recollection of it.
As you sit here today, you couldn't swear under oath you ever asked him to do that?
Correct.
Yes, sir. And being that he was a new employee, been with you less than 90 days, is that somebody you would typically ask to do something like that, giving him a credit card to go buy something off-site?
Like I stated before, if we were in a bind, we needed a part immediately, there was nobody else to go and do it, I was the only manager on staff, I might say, hey, can you run to the hardware store, Napa, whatever, and get a part. On the 19th, my brother and I were both at work that day. It would surprise me that I would ask somebody else to go to a store.
Right. Thank you, sir. Now, with respect to the 40-yard dumpster, you said that all the other dumpsters, everything ended up in the 40-yard dumpster, correct?
Well, you keep talking about multiple dumpsters. There's really just one that we emptied the car contents into, and that would end up into the, well, aside from the small garbage cans in the parking lot for customers, would end up in the 40-yard dumpster, yes.
So the waste that Ace Pick-Apart generates, it's going to either one of two places, is that correct? The smaller dumpster or the 40-yard dumpster?
It's all ultimately ending up in the 40-yard dumpster, yes.
Now, counsel also brought up whether you had seen anything unusual or anything suspicious at that time from the defendant during those 2 specific days. Would it be unusual to see him take, for example, a large black trash bag that had been duct taped and throw it into a dumpster? Is that unusual?
No.
And then counsel, lastly, she brought up that around the crusher or around the dumpster, really any area, I'm just asking you in general, that there are always several people around. On December 20th, is it true, sir, do you have a recollection of it raining heavily that day?
Until I saw the video, I didn't have a recollection, but in the video, I can see it was raining that day.
And isn't it clear from not only the timesheet, but also the video that y'all closed down early and sent people home that afternoon, correct?
Well, close down early, we don't typically do from a retail perspective. From a production perspective, if it's impeding, if the weather is impeding production workers in the yard working. Some or all may go home early. From the only time card I really looked at was his. I see that he did go home early that day. I can't speak to everybody else.
So if he was to clock out, Mr. Lindros, on December 20th, the next day, at the time you indicated, which was 2:48 p.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
Whether he milled around for 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes after that, that would be out of the ordinary once he's logged off, would it?
That would be out of the ordinary, and I have to say somebody could clock out early because it's raining, I can't get anything done, or they could clock out early because they say, I have something personal I need to do, can I go pay my phone bill? I don't know the reason that he clocked. I can't attest to the fact that it was weather-related or not.
Okay. Once someone clocks out, you're not walking them all the way out to their car, right?
No,
So if they're milling around after they clocked out, that's not unusual, is that correct?
that would be unusual.
Why?
If you clock out, you want to go home, I suppose.
But what I'm asking you is if an employee clocked out and they were still on the premises 10 or 15 minutes after that, is that in and of itself unusual?
It would be unusual, yes.
Just because everyone typically leaves once they punch out?
Yes.
Okay. If they don't punch out in the office and they're punching out where you say the punch out clock was down the way, do you even know to the minute when someone punches out?
We do not.
All right. In fact, the only way for you to know that is either look at the record after the fact, right?
Yes.
Or see them do it, right?
Yes.
So that afternoon, if he was to punch out at the 2:48 p.m. hour, if your eyes saw him at 3 p.m., you wouldn't know if he's on or off the clock.
I would not know.
Right. So that's not unusual for your eyes to see him, because you're not sure when he was punched out for that afternoon.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Sir, good to see you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, sir.